Hi, I'm Luke Reed and I'm a site reliability engineer at Fairwinds. And at Fairwinds, we use Datadog for monitoring, metrics, and log capturing. While Datadog provides a solid installation method for the clients we deploy on our Kubernetes clusters, it's up to the administrator to determine what to monitor and how to set up those monitors. This potentially time-consuming task means setting monitors up manually in the Datadog web interface, or preferably using a tool like Terraform to create repeatable monitor definitions in code. Monitoring is an interesting and difficult problem to solve because every application is different. Therefore, simply applying a particular monitor to a new cluster or application environment may not work the same as the last place it was applied. Because we manage so many Kubernetes clusters with a wide variety of uses, we needed a reliable, repeatable way to create, modify, and delete monitors for a wide variety of applications based on their current state in Kubernetes. This led to the creation of Astro. Astro is a controller that runs inside your Kubernetes cluster and watches for newly created resources, and it creates monitors for them based on a single configuration file. By simply annotating a deployment or namespace, you can get a monitor or set of monitors created automatically. Let's go through a quick demo. All right, so first things first, we're going to install Astro. We do that with Helm, and we do it through our Fairwinds stable Helm chart repository. So we're going to get that added and updated. And I'll also mention that I'm using Helm 2 in this demo. If you're using Helm 3, there's a slight difference in the install command. There is no -- name flag in Helm 3. The name of the release becomes a part of the install command itself. And that's the main difference here. The other thing I'm doing is setting this custom config.enable to true. And just by setting that to true, I'm pulling in the default configuration for Astro and the monitors that we deploy from the chart. With this set to true, you could also provide your own custom config for Astro, which you will most likely do so you can set your monitors. In the chart values file, I'm simply setting my Datadog API key and app key there, so I don't have to have that in clear text on the screen. Okay, we have it installed in our cluster. I'll mention that the cluster role that grants permissions to the Kubernetes API is only granting read-only access to deployments namespaces at this point. Okay, so we'll take a look at that configuration that we pulled in from the chart. The main thing in this configuration are the rule sets. So there are 3 different types of rule sets currently, with most likely will be expanding as time goes on. There's a deployment rule set that essentially applies all the monitors listed in the monitors block to any deployment with these annotations, which is just one annotation mentioned, but you could add more if you would like. The binding rule set type is where you annotate a namespace and then every type of resource in that namespace that matches a bound object, so in this case all the deployments, will get the monitors in the monitor block. So this becomes pretty powerful as we add more resource types, but for now deployments are only supported. Okay, and the final type is a namespace rule set type. You apply this annotation to a namespace and it will create all the monitors listed here. So this is good for more generic namespace monitoring, such as watching resource limits or resource requests in a given namespace across all pods, not necessarily just a single deployment or a single resource type within the namespace, but the namespace as a whole. One last thing I'll touch on in the configuration is the cluster variables section. So you can add as many cluster variables here as you want, and it's essentially a variable that you can use in the rest of the config elsewhere. So you just define it in one place and then it can apply to multiple places. So this, we're setting a warning notifications variable, and the variable name is whatever you want it to be. And we use Go templating to get the variable populated in the config. So here you can see we're using that warning notification variable in a monitor in the bound objects. Okay, so now let's see how it works. we're going to annotate a deployment that I have launched in this cluster with the annotation that we defined in the config for the deployment rule set type. And after we apply that, we should see it show up here in the monitoring dashboard, which we do. And then, just as important, when a deployment goes away or the annotations are removed, you would also want Astro to remove those monitors so you're not getting false alerts. All right, and we see that Astro went ahead and removed that monitor for you. So now we're going to show the bound monitoring, where we're going to apply a annotation to a namespace, and all the deployments within that namespace should get the monitor that we define in the config. So in this case, we still only have one deployment. So what I'm going to do now is launch a new deployment in the namespace, and we'll see that the bound object picks up that new deployment and creates a monitor for it as well. Okay, so there we go. And lastly, we'll go ahead and remove that bound monitoring annotation from the namespace, and we'll see both of those monitors go away. Refresh over here, and there we have it. So thank you for watching. Please check out our GitHub repository. There's a lot more documentation there, and we're also very open to issues for feature requests and bug fixes. And we would also love to get PRs for some of those that we already have submitted. Thank you very much.